for listening in to another episode of Conversations with Alison J, The Journey to Here. Please remember to subscribe, hit the like button and share. Hello and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Alison J. I'm your host, Alison J. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome our guest, Dr. Delroy Hall. Dr. Hall is a chaplain at Sheffield United Football Club, a lecturer at Leeds Beckett University, and a senior counsellor and wellbeing practitioner at Sheffield Hallam University. So Dr. Hall is going to talk to us today about a thing that I believe is not spoken about very often, not looked into and explored the way it should be, bereavement counselling. Dr. Hall, welcome to Conversations with Alison J, The Journey to Here.
How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm pretty good, thank you. Yeah, a little bit. I could do the trick from the Michael Jackson afro. But, good, thank you.
That's your COVID hair.
It is, yes. I like that one. Yes, COVID hair. Yeah, my mother hates beard with a passion. So every time she calls me, we don't. I live in Sheffield. She lives in Leicester. Delroy, you still have the beard? So yeah, she don't like beards at all. But I said it's coming off soon. It'll come off soon. So.
Yeah, but once we're able to get out, I think there's going to be a whole transformation.
Yeah, of course.
There's a lot of men that are looking a bit like, in Forrest Gump when he went on that run, and then he had the
yeah.
There's a lot of men looking like that at the moment, so you're not alone.
Yeah, right. Thank you. So yes, yeah.
And it suits you anyway.
So say again.
It suits you. The beard.
Yes. So oh gosh, when did we meet? 2016, wasn't it? 15, 16.
16, yes.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm no longer pastoring. Don't know if you know.
Yeah, yes, I did hear that. Yeah.
Yeah. Resigned 2 years ago, and I was very unwell, very, very, very well. And
how are you doing now?
Sorry?
How are you doing now?
Oh gosh, many times better.
Good.
I had bad eczema from my neck right down to my ankles. It was terrible. It took ages to diagnose what it was. I figured that's what it was, but I'd never had it so bad. Mm-hmm. Because I was in hospital for 3 days. It wasn't good. So I was told I got out just in time because the chronic stress had affected my autoimmune system.
Wow.
And Delroy, do you know that if you don't deal with chronic stress straight away, do you know what happens? No. Type 1 diabetes, strokes, brain hemorrhage, heart failure. So and I've actually left Church of God of Prophecy now as well.
Okay, yeah, because we had left, because when you saw us at the assembly, we weren't actually part of Church of God of Prophecy. The reason that we went is because you can imagine, at the time, I lived in Florida, my mother still lives in Florida, and we're thinking it's a drive up the road to go and see people that we haven't seen in years.
Of course.
So so that is really the reason we went, not even because we're members of Prophecy.
Of course.
So, but you know what? It's funny, going back to what you were saying about this chronic stress. So several years ago, before I left the UK, I actually studied to become a life coach, and I studied stress management.
Okay.
And the first few modules of it was all about physiology and anatomy. And I was struggling because I was doing it remotely, distance learning. And I'm thinking, they've sent me the wrong things. This is not right. And my ex-husband was saying, you sure, Alison, that they've sent you the right modules for your course? Because he's a personal trainer. So he's thinking, this is what I would do as a personal trainer. And so as it went on, the reason that they started with physiology and anatomy is to show the effects of stress on the body.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you saying that about, I knew some of the things, because I have said to people, I says, look, ulcers, high blood pressure, heart disease,
skin problems.
Right, but I didn't realize that skin problems to the extent the way you had the eczema. So that is actually something I can now incorporate to say, look, this thing can manifest itself, even though textbook wise they give you a list. But you're beginning to realize that it's not an exhaustive list of the things that could happen.
Well, I tell you, and I've started to write about it. Eczema was bad enough, but when I was admitted to hospital, I really wasn't well. I can't think somewhere. Anyway, I was admitted to hospital. It was a Friday, the 27th. I got to bed about 2 o'clock in the morning, Saturday morning. Woke up 6 hours later to use the bathroom, pulled the sheet back. Alison, there was a blanket of skin in the bed that had just fallen off my body.
Wow.
As then, it wasn't good. And I met a doctor, the church I go to, and when I told him, he looked at it and says, that's not good, you know, Delroy. I said, good. Yeah, so I shed a load of skin. And the only way I took the picture, but my camera's still, since then, is a bit messed up, but I didn't save it and all the rest of it. Well, I could describe the amount of skin that was on the floor. And it was when the cleaner came in, I said to her, I've shed a load of skin. She said, no, man, I'll clean it up. And she brushed it up. All I can say, it was like somebody had worked in the room for a day. And before they went home at night, they were just sweeping up all the mound of skin. I couldn't.
Wow.
Yes, I was in a bad way.
My goodness.
It was. And in the end, I realised in terms of, I'd asked Wilton to leave the church years before. I asked him 3 times to leave, and he said needed there and all the rest. In the end, I had to take matters into my own hands, and I said to Delroy, I never thought I'd be resigning. And then now, you know, I emailed him 3 weeks ago to say, look, I've done now. I've done 30 years of ministry within Church of God of Prophecy. I've learned a lot, but no, I need somewhere else now. So
yeah, and you know, so it's funny because for years we've grown up with that stress kills, but we've literally just used that as something that we say, opposed to it's actually a fact. Stress can kill you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And to your point about you left Church of God of Prophecy, my thing is, and the way that what I liken it to this, it's if I go to a restaurant and when I leave, I started going there and it was great. It was fine. It served the need. It served the purpose. But then as I continue to go there, I'm realizing, hold on a second, I'm leaving here dissatisfied. I'm leaving here. I've noticed that the service has changed. I've noticed that things are slipping and changing. Would I continue to go to that restaurant, or would I find somewhere else to go? But then think, okay, this is now suiting the need for where I am now. And it's funny because I look at it and I think when we're going for a new job, we spend more time researching the board, the leadership, the ethics of the company, all those kinds of things before we even think about, oh, okay, I want to work here. But then when it comes to going to a church, we'll either go there by default because that's where
of course.
Or we think, okay, I'm going to go to this church without doing the thorough, proper due diligence about, you know, what is the ethos and behind
of course. Yeah. So so I'm out of it. I remembered when I resigned, when I actually read my resignation in church, and I remember the 2 things happened. As I was reading, I broke down, and because I just never thought I'd be resigning. That was one. It took me about a year to put it into words. It was as though, Alison, it's as though I heard. I don't think it's as though I heard, and also it felt as though I'd been wearing a heavy leaded jacket and I got used to it, and I didn't know it was there. And I heard somebody say, "You've carried that long enough. I'll take it now." And I nearly said to the congregation, "Did you feel that?" Because I just felt this weight. It was just unbelievable. And I realized then how much I'd been carrying for so long. Wow. And I got used to it. But I remember stopping as I was reading the resignation. And I nearly said to the congregation, "Did you feel that?" And I realized it was my experience of just actually shedding the load of being a pastor for 30 years. It was work. It wasn't, because I wasn't born and raised in the church. So a lot of things I did was, people saw me as a maverick and I didn't tell the lie, all that type of stuff. So anyway.
And it's interesting because people like yourself that didn't grow up in the church, you do come to it with a whole different perspective, viewpoint, because it's not for you, it's more of a conscious choice decision that you went to church.
Yeah.
Because I know, like for myself, I was christened at Tubbs Road.
Mm-hmm.
My mother, we stopped going to church for a few years. And I think it was when I was about 3 years old,
Okay.
started going to church. And that was it. That's all I knew. And I remember I was 8 years old when I got baptized.
Right.
And I didn't get baptized for any other reason than my friends were doing it.
Yeah, of course.
That's why I got baptized. So it was one of those things where I didn't have the full knowledge and understanding of what I was doing. So when I was 18, I left church because it's like, I'm 18 now, I'm out.
Yeah, of course.
So then so when I did go back to church, it was a conscious decision to go back. And I was able to go back and bring with it a fresh perspective because in those years, I kind of live a life.
Yeah, and you bring it with you, don't you? You do bring it with you. Yeah, you do. So
that has helped me. So Delroy, tell me about your journey, because I'm always interested to know, like, certain industries and professions that people work in. What in the world drove you there?
Gosh, that's my journey. That's interesting. Obviously, parents, Windrush generation, met here, met and married here. The first wedding in Newark, first Caribbean wedding in 1957. Okay. And I was born 2 years later, but born to a very anxious mother because she'd lost the first child.
Okay.
So I was born to a very worried mother. She told me, we've had long conversations about it. And then she said that she didn't know whether she could get pregnant again. So my sister came along 3 years later, but she said, up until that time, you were in the presence of a very worried mother. And I now know, since being trained as a psychotherapist, I absorbed a lot of her anxiety, but I didn't know at the time. And only recently we had a conversation about 3 weeks ago. I developed eczema when I went to infant school. I never had it as a child, but I developed it when I went to infant school. So obviously at some level, I guess it must be around attachment, that the levels of stress, I have a reaction to stress. I can manage stress very, very well, but if it goes on for a long period of time, it's checked. So in Newark, from the age of whatever age to the age of just before my 10th birthday, moved to Leicester. Pretty average at school. wasn't brilliant. One thing that I did enjoy at school was writing. We had a thing called composition, make up stories, and I remember when I was about 14. I remember writing this story. Can't even remember the content now. And I thought, boy, this is a good story, and I just loved writing it. Anyway, handed in the book for the teacher to read and mark. Miss Avery, her name was. And the following week, she said, because normally she just give the books out. She says, before I give the books out, she said, I'd like to read your story. And I knew it was mine. And she read it to the class. And they'd just started a newsletter. So the story went into the newsletter, got comments from the teachers. There was another newsletter the month later, wrote another story, and then they stopped it. So from the age of about 14 to 20, I made loads of attempts to write books, and detective thriller books. But I thought, black people don't read, black people don't write books. So I stopped.
Wow.
So I stopped. But always, I think I've always had a love of words, but it was very hidden. My mother was of the generation, Delroy, be careful in the books you read. So I didn't read. So from the age of 16 to about 30, I just didn't read because I was always careful and cautious about books. But just go back for a bit. I left school at 16 with CSEs. I took 5 GCEs when I was 17, went to college, 5 O-levels. And I remember the Friday phoning my mum, and the results come, what have I got? English, U, maths, U, physics, U, technical drawing, U, general studies, 5 U's.
No way.
Yeah, 5 U's. And I was devastated. I was devastated. Anyway, I enrolled in another college and took 5 more O-levels, and I only got 1, which was English. And I remember the teacher, Mr. Walker, Leslie Walker, lovely guy. And I got the grade B, and I met him in the summer holidays, and he said to me, what did he get? I said grade B. He said, oh, he says, it's a pity. He said, I put you down for a grade A. So English and words and imagery, I don't think was fully formed, but I think there was something that was developing. So got involved in athletics. So I left school at 16, but before I did, I was very fearful. Right, is this what you want? Is this what you want in terms of my story?
Yeah, please, yeah.
Yeah, so at 15, I thought, right, I'm leaving school next year and I don't want to end up with a big beer belly. So what do I need to do? Keep fit. So I joined an athletics club at 16 just to keep fit, did sprints, and then, cut a long story short, I ended up doing hurdles. So I started 1976 as a hurdler, 400-meter hurdles, and by 1979, I was number 2 in Great Britain as a 400-meter hurdler.
No way.
Yeah, the age 20. Yeah, so yeah, life has been interesting, and so I'm not a natural academic. I'm just kind of keep going at stuff. What athletics did for me, which I didn't realize at the time, it taught me discipline.
Okay.
Hugely. So I train on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Sundays was always a big issue because by that time I'd become a Christian. So the whole thing around competing on a Sunday back was a real big deal. So I'd meet my coach Tuesday, Thursday, but then we would sit down and put a schedule together. So I knew when I saw him the following week, he'd want to know what I did on the Wednesday, the Friday, the weekend, and so forth.
Right.
So, but at 20, I didn't know that it was going to shape me for the rest of my life. So for a long time, I wanted to be a physiotherapist. And, but then as time went on, more qualifications I got, the goalposts seemed to get wider and wider. Mm-hmm. And what happened, the good old days of youth camp that you may remember.
Yes.
So I became a Christian when I was 20, became a member of Church God of Prophecy when I was 22. And then 2 years later, got involved in youth camp. And then a couple of years later after that, I was a youth VLB leader, Victory Leaders Band, youth leader in the local church in Leicester. And in those days, when you were a youth leader in the local church, you were a counsellor at camp.
Oh, that's how they did it. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
So I thought, wow, this is kind of serious, being a counsellor. Then I did it the following year, and I thought, oh, I need to get some skills. So, cut a long story really short, my mother found this course that was being run at Leicester at the time, at a college attached to Leicester University, counselling course. So I did it only to be effective as a counsellor 1 week of the year at camp, or 2 weeks of the year.
Yeah.
Well, for me to get these skills, to make sure these skills are honed, I need to get kind of regular practice. So I went for an interview at Leicester Counselling Centre, got being a counsellor, volunteer counsellor. And as I say, the rest is history. I just took to it like
a duck to water, right?
Oh my gosh, yes. And it was then, at 28, 29, I then get involved in the world of counselling. My mind is open to ways of looking at the world, still very much a very staunch Pentecostal Christian, but then started to ask lots of questions about, not about God or Jesus, but how we operated in church. And this talk about having a little talk with Jesus and everything will be all right, I didn't believe it. I grew up with it, but I got to the stage where I didn't believe it. So then got married at 32, the following year later, I left British Telecom to train as a psychotherapist and a teacher, and then got involved in pastoral work, pastoral ministry. And then that's how it's kind of happened, really, to that point anyway, to 30
And, that is so interesting. And that's one of the reasons why I like to start with knowing the journey. Because people would tend to look at somebody in their profession today and think that is how it started.
Sure.
When you think about it, what you actually had intended is not where you are today. And it's just amazing that the journey, there's very few people that start with, this is what I want to do, and that's what they end up doing.
Sure.
When I was younger, there's so many things. I wanted, first of all, I wanted to be a chef.
Okay.
nowhere near a chef.
Right, okay.
And I wanted to be a teacher. And I remember doing a placement in a school, and I'm thinking, no, I could not handle these children all day, every day. This is, so it's amazing that the way that the journey starts, and how the way that it goes, the winding road, it's never a straight road, because the bumps and the curves. So it's meeting you when I did, like 4 or 5 years ago, I would never have thought that is how your journey started, especially when you're telling me you got U's. You didn't even get grades. Like, what?
Well, the thing about it is that I haven't got a first degree, and I didn't go to uni till I was 38.
My gosh. And
So
that is
people
so important for people to see and know and hear. So that's it's like, don't give up. It doesn't
absolutely
matter.
correct.
Just keep going. Don't give up.
Absolutely correct. You know, like now I'm doing lots of work with the NHS now, and training the what's it called, BAME staff. But one of the things when I'm introducing myself, I said, look, you might see all these letters behind my name, but let me tell you the story. I'm not academic, haven't got a first degree, didn't go to university until I was 38. Took me a long time to do the PhD, one thing and another. And so the journey hasn't been straightforward. It's kind of meandered and all the rest of it. But I've learned along the way, loads along the way. But yeah, it's been, at times, it's been very painful, as you can, you know, every life is painful. But yeah, this is who I am. So the journey, is it one preacher in America? I've never heard the preacher speak, but I understand that he says quite often, you might see the glory, but you don't know the story.
I think that sounds like a T.D. Jakes thing.
Oh, right, is it?
That sounds so T.D. Jakes. I couldn't I don't know, but that really does sound, because he has had an amazing journey to the point of where you see him today. And I remember him saying that there's times he didn't want to kneel down and praise because people would see the holes in his shoes.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you say you're not where you are today, a chaplain at Chelsea Football Club. Chelsea, Sheffield.
Yeah, that's right.
Sheffield. I don't know where Chelsea. I don't even like Chelsea. No, I'm kidding. Chelsea, in case you hear it. I don't even know where Chelsea came from. But chaplain at Sheffield Football Club. You are a lecturer, and a practitioner and a minister. And so to hear you say that you're not a natural academic,
no,
and then you have these letters after your name and credentials, and you didn't go to get your degree until you were in your late 30s. That is such an amazing, important part of your journey that I really believe people should hear and know. Because a lot of people, I mean, and we all know people like that they come to the first, and it's funny, you know, using no pun intended because you are a hurdler, but they come to the first hurdle. And that literally is it. They kind of stop there. And because I remember, because, you know, transparency, I went through a divorce late 2016. And I remember saying to my ex-husband, if we are going to fall at this first hurdle, then our marriage was never going to make it.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and I think that's a lot of things that people need to see, that you come to, life is filled with hurdles.
Yes, it is. Filled
it really with hurdles. People think that life is going to be like Usain Bolt in 100 meters.
Sure.
It's like, no. More think about, not even hurdles, think about steeplechase. It's long. There's going to be water. There's going to be things to jump over, things to go around, all that kind of. So it's so interesting. So but one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today, which especially at this time of what is happening in the world, I wanted to talk to you about bereavement and bereavement therapy, counselling, because there's a lot of people, like prime example, and you probably know many as well, having come up through Church of God of Prophecy. So many people have passed away in such a short period of time.
Of course.
Like personally, for myself, between mid-March and the end of May, I got news of over 20 people that had passed away. And we're not even adding to everything that's going on in the world outside of that, what's going in the news and all those things. And it's one of those things where for a while, I was becoming quite overwhelmed. And especially because when somebody passes away pre-pandemic, it was a case of, if you're not in the country, you make the arrangements, you go to whichever country that's in, or if you are in the country, you go and you visit the family. But the fact that we can't do that now.
Yeah, sure.
And so people are having to try and find different ways to process and to deal. And I don't know how successful people are in that, because of you're going through grief on so many different levels and so many times over in such a short space of time. It's like, I mean, talk to us about bereavement counselling and just processing that.
Okay. Well, I think one of the things, of course, is what's affected all of us is loss. And some of the work I'm doing with individuals, I've said to them, don't underestimate the violent assault that's taken place on your body in terms of what's taken place with COVID-19. So loss of job, furlough, loss of routine, loss of losing loved ones. So the loss is on a grand scale, and then it becomes complicated because it's not just the one, it's multiple.
Yeah.
Well, then what's happening to us? So for example, within the Caribbean culture and other cultures, when somebody dies, we have what we call nine night.
Yeah.
You then, go around to the home, you sing, have choruses, look at photographs, pray with, have food, all that's gone. The service is a celebration, that's gone. It's beginning to lift a bit now, but the graveside, so that's gone. So what I've suggested with some people, that when you have the nine night, you could do it on Zoom or another social platform. If the person is well known, which I've done already when one of the bishops died.
Yes, I watched that on YouTube.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, if the service is streamed, then put on your good clothes as if you're going to be there, if you're going to be there. So you're there in a sense. You're not there in body, but you're taking the steps. You've gone through the rituals of putting on your good clothes and all the rest of it, and you watch it on the screen. So still making a connection with what's taking place. For people who have who belong to a church community, one of the things that I've said, and I've written a service and so forth, we can't go back and just say business as usual. There has to be a period of lament.
Yeah.
Which is very evident in the scripture, whereby we bring our sorrows and brokenness and despair to God. So I've highlighted how service could look. So it's about expressing our grief, pain and sorrow, and there's space for that. And if you're not sure about the space, read a lot of the Psalms. There's lots said in the Psalms about grief, sorrow, sadness, misery, disappointment, but also in lamentation. So there's a service. I've even suggested that maybe it's not just a one service, because there's been so much, not just COVID, but now there's this stuff with George Floyd, and maybe we've never had a service about the amount of black people that have been killed in police custody. About other, in terms of human rights, then we have a service about the lament about the amount of human beings that are suffering and have died in parts of the world. So we use it just to have a broader picture. So it's all there in the scriptures for us to deal with. Now, bereavement, it was the kind of the grandmother of grief and bereavement was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who wrote the 5 stages of grief, which was denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And what she said in 1974, that when she wrote the stages, it wasn't to sanitize a messy process. Because grieving is messy, grieving is universal, but grieving is also personal. So then there's a whole stage of what people experience when they lose a loved one. And I don't know if you're aware, but I do something on Facebook Live. The story behind that was that when some of our bishops died in Birmingham, this is all public anyway, somebody went to the newspaper anonymously and spoke about their concerns about the future of the church and so forth. And then the paper said, or the news item said, that they spoke to our media rep, and the person said that the bereaved families are being well supported. And I remember reading it thinking, no, they're not. No, they're not. For us, being well supported means pray with them and then say to the family, trust the Lord and he'll see you through.
All things work together for good.
Yeah, absolutely.
That one.
At one level, I believe that, but I just thought, no, that's not. I got quite angry. I just thought, no, that's not it. Anyway, I spoke to a couple of friends and I said, you know what, I'm going to put a video on, and do a little video. So I just put the phone up on, kind of propped it up, and I just did it. It was a 12-minute video, put it on Facebook. All this is, I'm an old fogey, so this is kind of new to me. Well, not old, but, Facebook. I do Facebook, but no, I don't put stuff on it, all the rest of it. So I put something on Tuesday, the 14th of April, and I was surprised at the amount of views within a short space of time. And then my two friends encouraged me to do a Facebook Live. So I said, what's a Facebook Live? So I got my daughter to say, how do you do this? And so I did the Facebook Live 16th of April. Mm-hmm. Last week I saw there was over 2,000 views.
Wow.
So every Tuesday since then, I've been looking at different aspects of how to deal with loss and bereavement. So first thing, of course, is accepting how we feel.
Yeah.
That is key.
Mm-hmm.
Important to accept how we feel. There's a whole package around unexpressed emotions. Sigmund Freud said that emotions don't die. You bury them and they appear later in uglier ways. So so if I can give you an example. Somebody I know, his friend, many years ago, quite a few years ago, if I remember the story right, he got three boys. Wife was pregnant. Daughter was born on Christmas Day, a daughter they've always wanted. 6 weeks later, the baby died in a house fire. So my friend, absolutely distraught, brilliant school teacher, every job he went for, got it, I think deputy head possibly. 12 years, carried on as normal. 12 years, massive explosion in his life. I think he turned to drink, drugs, lost his house, lost his job, lost the family.
My goodness.
In a mess. Years of unexpressed emotions. And what that does, the other thing about emotion, if you don't express them, especially unpleasant ones, and because the thing to point out, that emotions are always seeking a healthy means of expression. Suppress them, what happens, emotion lodges itself in our bodies, in our joints, organs, muscles, and leads to all manner of problems, diabetes, skin problems, severe migraines, and other things. But the thing that's the most damaging is that it affects the immune system. If we suppress emotions, the immune system is called the floating brain, and it sends chemical messages to the brain to operate in certain ways. But if the immune system doesn't function well, hence people get diseases, they catch things really quickly. So think about expressing emotions really, really important. So accepting how you feel is one, and there's ways that you do that. One of the ways, of course, is to write. I'm a big journaler, I have been since 1999. So one of the things that you can do, you can use the process of writing to express how you feel.
As a form of an outlet.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. There's a method we use in counselling called unsent letters, whereby, as it suggests, it's a you write. So for example, somebody dies, you weren't able to say goodbye and so forth, but so it's left quite a vacuum. So the process of writing is really, really important. There's lots of research on writing and its impact on grief and bereavement. There's lots of research around writing and people recovering from operations, they recover quicker. It just manages a whole range of things, reduces anxiety levels, reduces blood pressure. So writing is one, talking is another, and don't spend your time with people who will say stuff like, "You mean you've not got over that yet?" Or people that are insensitive. Don't spend too much time with them, because
pull yourself together kind of people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not helpful. And even one of the things about bereavement, of course, is sometimes it's asking people for help, which can be quite difficult. But those who might be listening, if you know that somebody is bereaved, don't say to them, if you want anything, let me know. Offer something, because do it. Don't say, look, if you need me, I'm at the end of the phone. Offer something that you can do. And people that are grieving, I'd say one of the things, don't forget about self-care. That's really, really important. And again, so in a sense, there's some stuff you can do, but there's stuff that other people can do. So for example, go to a friend's home and cook for them a couple of times a week, or when we can go out, go out with them. And so, there's a lot can be done. And I'd say the process can take anywhere between 6 months to 4 years.
And it's funny that you should say that, because I read many, many years ago, because I was one of those people, I thought I was being helpful when I was always saying, I'm here for you, you need anything, call me. And I would wait for them to come to me.
Yeah, of course.
And many years ago, I read a quote, and I cannot for the life of me remember where I read it or who said it.
Sure.
And it was, don't ask what you can do, think of something you can do and do it.
Yeah.
And so when I read that, and I thought, something that is so true, because when a person is caught up in their emotions and they're trying to live a new normal,
of course,
the last thing they're going to probably think of, oh, you know what, I can call Alison. Let me ask Alison to do this.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't even know what they need until you're bringing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or sometimes they may not even realize that they haven't eaten all day till you go around with a meal. And they're like, actually, you know something? I haven't eaten today. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And
yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting you should say that, because I know, like, for myself, I've gone through periods of time where I've just withdrawn myself from going through something. And when I've kind of resurfaced, you hear but I was just giving you space. I didn't want to. And it's like, that's the time you shouldn't be giving you space.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
The time
correct.
that you should be making that connection, and you should
and sure.
And it's that part where people think, oh, I'm just going to give them space. And so so in your view, does that make a person's loss feel even greater when you don't have those people checking in on you and giving you space, so to speak?
And also worse still, you see somebody on the same side of the road as you, and then the next thing you look up, they're on the opposite side of the road. Now, partly because they don't know what to say, but it just reinforces negative emotions within you that something must be wrong. What's been interesting, as you've asked that question, it reminded me, I had to do some work recently. And what happens when people have an infectious disease like COVID, they feel unclean and dirty and unwanted. And when they're in hospital in isolation, by the mere fact of the medical workers coming to them with their protective gear on, it reinforces how they feel.
Yeah.
So when somebody has lost a loved one, in a one sense, they're in a strange land, they're in a strange world. And their life would have been disrupted because at one time they're a couple and they went along with other couples and they're on their own and they don't know where they fit, and it takes time. So it's about, at least if you offer, they can say no.
Yeah.
So, that's something about offering. In one of the first videos I did, that one of the questions was, well, say people don't want your help. Well, you have to respect that.
Yeah.
But you let people know on a regular basis that you're there for them. What can happen? I'm there for you, and then they don't hear from you for months. And it might be that each week, a couple of times a week, 2 or 3 times a week, you give them a call. I'd say more a call than a text. Something about hearing the voice that's really important. And loss can be in terms of losing a loved one, but separation and divorce is another loss. And I recall somebody I know who went through, he and his wife separated. And I think for about 3 or 4 years, I called him 3 or 4 times a week. Conversations were never long. How's things? Are you managing yourself okay? Blah, 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 blah. So sometimes the conversation don't have to be long, but just keep regularly checking in and maybe asking, certainly if somebody's lost a loved one. And you know, you can imagine if one of the person has died and they did all the bills and all the rest of it, the other person now don't know how to do it. So, so, you know, it's offering to help, you know, where you can.
And it's funny that you should go into, it's not necessarily just death, it's separation, divorce, because I actually was going to go on to that, because having gone through that myself, having gone through divorce, it's one of those things where it's so strange the way people treat you so differently. Like, it's just okay, and it's like, and then people don't know what to say, and then again you're left feeling like something's wrong with you, because whereas with somebody passing away, that person's gone, but and they're dead, so it's like it's one level. But then when you go through a divorce and the way people treat you, it's like you start to internalize and question yourself, like, I'm a failure, I couldn't make that work.
Absolutely.
So then talk to us about how you would suggest people deal with that because it's not bereavement, but it is still a loss, because you still have to mourn and grieve that process, right?
Yes, you do. And again, you know, two things, of course, is the whole thing. This is, and the separation, it becomes more complicated if two people realize, you know what, this is not working out, which is very different to having an affair, or going back to my earlier days in church as a Christian. The church I grew up in had a real thing about divorce and remarriage. And so if you were divorced, you had to remain on your own. And I was a staunch believer in that. And I remember doing the counselling training, and there was a young woman who became really, really good friends. And what would happen for 3 years now, I'd walk her to the bus stop, wait for her to get the bus, and then I'd go and get mine. And then near the course, she said to me, Delroy, I've met somebody, and I've been dating him for a while, and he wants me to, he's asked me to marry him. But she said, I'm not sure if I want to get married again. Well, I heard that word again, and my kind of Church of God spirit kind of came up, and I said, again, and something said to me, just listen to her. So I said to her, what happened? She said, Delroy, when I got married at 24, it was for life. 3 years later, my husband said to me, whatever his name was, I don't love you anymore. I fell in love with a man and I'm leaving you. I'm going to live with him. Ooh. Well, that blew my mind.
Wow.
Because I remember, in fact, the course ended shortly after that, and she went down to Cardiff, and you know, I've never met her since. And I've not seen her for 30 years.
Wow.
But she doesn't know the impact that had on me, because I then started to say, well, hang about. God, that's not her fault.
Right.
To spend the rest of her life on her own. That never made sense to me. It just didn't. So at that point, I started to question a lot about the church. I went to it. So separation, again, depends. If it's amicable, in a sense, people are at kind of different stages. But if it's been an affair, there's this whole thing of rejection, and the deceit that goes on, the betrayal that's gone on. So again, it's finding one or two people who you trust, who you can do. The other thing I would say, I would really encourage people to keep a journal.
Okay.
An excellent book called Journal to the Self by Kathleen Adams, and she calls it the 79 Cents Therapist. So when you write, no matter what you write, the paper won't come back and retaliate or say something. So again, so speaking to people, writing to people, and there may be space for you to be on your own for a bit, but you don't want to do that all the time.
Right.
The thing I would say is that what some people do, very interesting, with the COVID, what happened in the UK, when lockdown began, sales went up by 31%.
Sorry, what went up by 31%?
Food
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, food sales went up by 31%, alcohol 35%.
Wow.
So when we separate, and one of the reasons, so we separate, so there's lots of pain, grief.
Mm-hmm.
One of the danger things for us to do is that in an attempt not to deal with the pain, we can get ourselves involved in other relationships, which are not healthy. So they're called rebound relationships quite often.
Okay.
Doesn't work. So we can use alcohol and people, so in dealing with the pain, alcohol, illicit relationships, spending more time online, maybe looking at stuff we shouldn't be looking at,
Mm-hmm.
surfing the net, lots of things we can do, which actually in the short term may be okay, but long term can lead to addiction.
Right. Okay.
People smoke more, take drugs, which normally they wouldn't. It might be fine in the short term, but long term, it can lead to addiction. So then you've got more problems then.
And then, like you said, alcohol sales went up. So because they're at home all day, every day, working from home, you can you could be drinking literally while you're at your desk working in this situation. So then when you go back to work, you have to, what happens?
Yes. But the other thing as well, the underlying fear for lots of people, which we don't speak about often, is this whole thing about death. Because COVID-19 is an invisible killer.
Mm.
Who's got it? You don't know who's infected. You can't see it coming. So underlying all this anxiety is the kind of fear of death, I suspect. So in terms of separation, it's the stuff that I said before, speaking to somebody, writing, and at some point beginning to re-emerge again to kind of socialize, but then realizing this is a new environment. What I'd also say to individuals who have separated, working with clients as I do, I ask people, not at the first stage, but on reflection, can you see where you've developed the relationship? Could you see possibly where you've hindered the relationship or you caused things to go pear-shaped? At that point, if the individual is able to see their part in the breakdown of the relationship and can process it, you make the same mistake and bring it into the new relationship. So quite often, I don't know what the stats are now, but at one time it was that 2 out of 4 marriages end in divorce. Remarry, 3 out of 4 end in divorce. Quite often, levels of trust are never the same.
Yeah.
And the issues that ended the first relationship, if they're not processed, can end the second one. Yeah. So it really is a time of reflection, really, a period of reflection. I would also say, if you have the money, go and pay somebody to help you work through some issues. Because actually, you might have known that these issues were there from time, but you've not done anything with it. It's a bit like, it's not the best example, but hopefully you'll be able to hear it. It's a bit like some people who know they're gay and they get married to some of the opposite sex, hoping it'll go away.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. No, it just doesn't. So now there's a point I was getting to when I said that. So it's actually then the issues won't go away by somebody else. So pay somebody. We will spend thousands of pounds on our cars and a few £100 or dollars a month to make the payment on an item which may get you from A to B, but depreciates. Investment in yourself. Pay somebody for, I don't know, 6 months, a year to work through some issues you know problematic in your relationship, and then the next person you meet, they will meet a different person because you would have those issues. So.
And it's interesting to your point, because I realized that for myself because the way that my marriage broke down is that like that, well, not quite about the falling in love with another man part. My ex-husband came to me and said, like, I don't want to be married to you anymore. I don't love you. I don't want this. And so I'm looking at it like, what? Because we hadn't even been married long. And I was just like, what? Huh? And then in my mind, I just kept saying, if you want to go, I'm not going to stop you. Because I just thought to myself, he sounded as though he's made up his mind.
Of course.
And that was like, I think probably about June. And then it felt a bit like torture for me, because it was almost like every week or every other week it was, can we talk? Sure. And he would say the same thing. I don't love you, don't want to be married. So I'm just like, well, if you want to go, I will not stop you. And in my head, I'm like, well, why are you still here if you keep saying this to me? And then a few months later, I found out he was involved with another woman.
Right, okay.
So it's just like, well, I'm just here till I can sort myself out, and so on and so forth. And I just thought, and I was just thinking, this makes no sense. So then, so 6 months later, when I couldn't take it anymore, and it was just like so disrespectful, and like, that's it, get out, just go, just go. Because for 6 months, you've been doing this.
Yeah, of course.
And I can just imagine to everybody, it was like, she threw me out. There's no him telling everybody what he did.
Of course.
I threw it out, right? I'm the bad one. And so after all of that, I was quite happy to say, he did this and he did that and he. And then it was literally like one day when I was, and it's not like I was going around saying that, just to my inner circle.
Sure.
And there was just one day, it was just like, Alison, what did you do? What part did you have to play in this?
Sure.
And then so I had to look at myself and look at, okay, how did I contribute to the breakdown of my marriage? And then I had to look at, one of the things that he would always complain about is I worked long hours.
Right, okay.
But I felt like I was justified to work the long hours because we had a goal.
Yeah, sure.
So because we wanted to buy a house. So it was a case of, okay, let's get as much money as we can to put down a huge down payment, so our monthly outgoings are less. And then because he's a personal trainer, if he doesn't have a client, he doesn't get paid. And I get paid overtime. So if I can get overtime, it will make up for that shortfall. So in my head, it was, we have a goal, we're working towards something, so I'm justified not paying attention to the fact of it was an issue for him. So then I had to look at myself to say, okay, and then I had to work on that, because it was a case of listen. So you weren't listening to him. I was hearing him, but I wasn't listening to him to know that it was that big of a deal and big of an issue. So then I had to do that work on myself. As you were saying, that and to kind of, unfortunately, being a coach and a therapist myself, I didn't have to pay somebody, because I was actually able to take that step and look at, okay, what do you need to do? And so in my next relationship, things have been very, very different, because I'm listening to what he's saying. If there's something I'm doing that's bothering him, I'm paying attention to that, not paying attention to the justification I've built up.
Of course.
So it's interesting that people really do, because, and don't get me wrong, in that woman's case, she fell in love with another man, I don't know what she could have possibly have done to work on herself. But because, I mean, it does vary. I do appreciate it does vary. But for the most part, when it's just a straight thing where, you know, they may want to just say like that, look, that's it. And when if more of us are actually honest and start to replay and just do that whole slow motion rewind, we can look to say, well, okay, was he saying something that was bothering me and I wasn't listening?
Of course. I think you know, if you with somebody who's then falling in love with somebody of the same sex, obviously something was going on a long time before. I've never heard. I think I've heard of one individual had an operation when he recovered. He woke up whether feeling gay or was gay or whatever. I don't understand all that, but quite often people don't wake up one morning and say, "Oh, I feel gay today," and I'm so he must have known, and I think what some people do, some cultures do it, some churches do it. It's a kind of open secret, but let's kind of sweep it under the carpet, get a person married off. But it's disastrous. And then quite often when there's a disaster, the church or the community doesn't know how to deal with it. And then people are kind of left kind of struggling really. But I think your points are really important. That's actually working on yourself it's not about blaming yourself. It's actually being mature and responsible, and working through some of the issues, and that the next person who you will meet, they will meet a better human being.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not about, I think if we go down the road of blaming and people feeling guilty, it doesn't really do much. But it's, how can I grow from this? What have I learned about myself? Can't change the person who's gone or who I've left. Can't change them, but what can I do? And for some people, they may say, you know what, if I ever get into a situation like this again, I'm not going to stay so long. It might be that. I remember a friend saying to me just before I finished ministry, he said, Delroy, he said, well, finish big church leadership, because you don't finish ministry, because ministry is service to people. He said, loyalty is a good thing, but loyalty can kill you.
Wow.
And a very powerful statement. And I think sometimes a lot of us can be loyal in situations, but actually it's killing us.
Yeah.
It's not, we're not growing, we're not nurtured, we're not being nurtured. We are dying in this thing that we're loyal to. And I'm not convinced that's what God wants for us at all. And whoever listens to this, says, if anybody out there is a reader, there's an excellent book I would encourage anybody to get. It's called Let Your Life Speak by Parker Palmer.
Okay.
But it's an excellent book about our lives. We see the potential, but we spend a lot of our lives conforming to what other people should say. We're in relationships that really kind of dumbing us down. And letting your life speak is who is Delroy Hall? Is more than the past. Who is he? And equally, you can ask the question about yourself. Who am I? Who am I? And the job that I'm in, am I in it because it's about status, it's about kudos, it's about, if the money might be good, but actually I'm not enjoying it, but actually it's not really me, I really need to be doing this. So it's I just think it's something that's really interesting and important.
And it's funny, when you said that, not funny, interesting, when you said that, what first came to mind is, when you say to somebody, who are you? And they'll tell you, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a teacher, I'm a this, I'm a this, I'm a this. It's like, no, that's what you do.
Yes, right, yeah.
Who are you?
Yeah.
And
yes.
Yeah, and it's funny because I remember, like, looking back on my own life, I remember that I was my first serious relationship that lasted a few years. And when it ended, I was thinking, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I like, because as a young girl, because he was a few years older than myself. So I was 21 and he was in his early 30s.
Okay.
So it was one of those things where he had the experience and he was a businessman and had the money and so on. So we went where he wanted to go. We went to the restaurants he wanted to go to. And so we kind of became this one. So it wasn't two becoming one. It was literally like we became his one.
Of course.
And then afterwards, I had to really take time out to find out who I am, find out what I like. It's just like, now I'm like, listen, you know what? I don't like eggs. I don't like bananas. But at the time, because he did, I may not have said that. I would have probably suffered and struggled through it. But then it got to the stage where it's like, you know what? I don't like this. There are other things where I really like this, or I like to do that. And I like to do this. And I think that is so important for people to take that time, even when they are in a relationship, to still maintain and hold on to the core of who you are. Obviously, if it's not a good person, we need to fix that. But the core of who you are and what you like, and don't lose that. So that when you are in a relationship, because sometimes I think, are there sometimes underlying resentments in there that people are doing what the other person wants to do, but they don't really like it, they don't really want to, but they just want to make that person happy and want to just toe the line. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it happens. I think sometimes we can do things for an easy life. We don't want to ruffle the feathers. I've got a ministerial supervisor, and he told me of a story. True story. He knows a couple who separated and divorced in their 80s, And when they asked the question, when they were asked the question, why have you done it at this age? Their response was, the children have died. So they stayed together because their children would have been adults, big people, because they're in their 80s. They stayed together because the children were still alive. And once the children died,
there was nothing.
Yeah, nothing there. So they should have done it years previous to that. But they stayed together, perhaps, and to the point whereby, you know, some people they don't even like each other, but part of the community, if they're part of the church community where separation, divorce is frowned upon, people stay together, sleep in separate bedrooms, have done for years. And it's not because he snores or she snores. They really don't like each other. So, you know, it happens. And then quite often they don't have the courage to say, you know what, we need to go separate ways. So, yeah, it does happen. It happen. I think, and just to kind of take my own point, that I got to the place of being a pastor that I hated it. I didn't like it anymore.
My goodness.
And I'm just being honest. I wasn't enjoying it. And in fact, I should have left 5 or 6 years earlier. And I think one of the things I do know, going back to your point, that oftentimes when a crisis hits us, when I've spoken to people in a crisis, and my own crisis as well, when I was unwell, there were signs along the way that we either choose to ignore, dismiss, didn't want to confront.
Yeah.
Crisis then gets our attention. That's what the crisis does. It gets our attention to stop and have a look.
It forces you to. Yeah,
it does. It really, really does. And I would never say that God has caused the illness. Not at all. I think there were signs along the way, but sometimes we see the signs, but the external pressures can be so much that we hope that it kind of goes away, but actually in the end, it doesn't go away. And we have to face the fear.
Yeah.
The journey, we have to face the fear. So it happens in jobs that we do, ministries, relationships that we're in. Yeah, it just goes on and on and on. But we conform because it's easier to do that, to conform than to branch out and do something different.
That is interesting. That is so true, because we do it. I think we do that in so many areas of life. We just conform. That is interesting. So what's next for Delroy Hall?
Well, I'm starting. Well, my business, private practice, is beginning to take off. So my little 12-minute video started on Facebook. It really to anesthetize some irritation that I experienced at the time. From that,
your own therapy.
Well, it wasn't my own. Well, in one sense, one of the things when I do lectures, and I've taught on counselling courses before, I said to students, during the course or the session, if you feel uncomfortable, make a note of it, because it's a message trying to get your attention. So reading the article made me quite irritated, really. So I did something about it. On the back of that, so I'm developing my own private practice with clients. On the back of that, I got a phone call May time. So somebody had followed me, but I didn't really know her. Somebody followed me, quite high up in nursing in London, and got a phone call the 23rd of May, Saturday. Just finished the run. She said, "Oh, Dr. Hall, it's down here." Da, 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 da. Yeah, I said, "Oh, yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for following me on Facebook. Are you free next Saturday?" Yes. Could you do a lecture? Yes. What is it on? Readiness for COVID-19. It's for the Lagos Health Commission.
Okay.
Absolutely shocked. I wasn't expecting that. So I did the lecture the following week. It was online, and then that's happened. And then I'm doing some work now with Black and Asian minority ethnic staff within the NHS. Developing survival strategies for COVID-19 and issues of race. So that's happening. So I had a very interesting conversation with a friend of mine, Dr. Nena, Nigerian clinical psychologist. Back in March, we met each other about 3 years ago at a conference. She was a speaker and I was. we exchanged details, just kind of loosely kept in contact with each other. And March this year, lockdown had occurred, and we were talking about various things. So she spoke to me about my private practice. She said, well, it's up to you what you want it to be. So I said, what do you mean? You can either have a private practice whereby clients come to you and that's all you do, or you can do some lectures, seminars, webinars. She is now seconded to her base is in Leeds, Chapeltown, but she's seconded to the UN. She does work with doctors in Baghdad, different parts of the world. So she said, it's up to you how you want your private practice to be. So I'm open at the moment to, and it's the NHS stuff. Some of the feedback I've received has been absolutely, I just didn't even expect it at all. Only a 1 hour session, looking at what's happening, how you're experiencing it, and these are some of the emotional strategies you can use to guide your way through COVID and so forth. So I love teaching and training, so hoping to do more of that. I work at Sheffield Hallam, so just before lockdown, I was asked to do because there was lots of stress within university, so I was put a workshop together looking at crisis avoidance. Done it, but we've not run it out yet. And now they want me and another guy to look at this whole Black Lives Matter and looking at this whole kind of being anti-racist. So I've been asked a few days ago to put a session together for the staff, because out of 22 staff, there's only 2 of us are black guys. The rest are all kind of white folk. So my view is, for those who may be listening, that actually, if you start finger pointing to white, they get defensive and they don't learn.
Yeah. But that's the same. But it's not just with white people, though. That's with
no. Sorry, I'm just about to say
anybody.
Yeah. So right, any one of us. But I think, given the sensitivity of what's happened at the moment, how people actually beginning to explore how they're experiencing certain things. So you're right, whether black or white, and you kind of jumped to me before I did, but glad to point it out, though, that actually all of us, if we stop learning, because we're protecting something which is quite vulnerable.
Say that again, because it cut out, and I think that's important. If you start
finger pointing and people become defensive, they stop learning because they protect something which is vulnerable. So then it's about allowing that vulnerability to begin to pop its head over the parapet, to see actually there is a life out there. So leaving our comfort zone and stepping into a new area and learning from it, as comfortable as it might. It's only be uncomfortable for a short while. It won't be uncomfortable forever. But I think if you can begin that dialogue, that conversation, it will kind of continue growing and developing. So yes, I turned 60 last year, finishing pastoring, skint, very, very different from America to the UK. And I went to a hotel, had a cafetiere of coffee with my journal, and reflected somewhat. And I said to my friends, I've planned the next 25 years of my life, and after that, the best years are yet to come. I have no intentions of retiring, none whatsoever. I don't see the point. Coaching, mentoring, counselling, lecturing, teaching, writing. When do you quit that?
You don't.
You don't. You don't. You just gain more experience. I'd be happy if I had another 25 years of active work life, ministry, and then I might think about slowing down. But
slowing down, okay.
Yeah, but seriously, I'm serious. A client asked me a few days ago, says, have you reached your peak yet? I said, what? Nowhere near. So yeah, I pray for good health, and I think I'll do something about that. Keep exercising, diet, make sure I don't get too stressed. But joking aside, I guess as I get older, I won't have the energy levels, but I just do less days.
Right, yeah, of course.
I can do 5 days now, but maybe in 3 years' time I can do 3 days. My counselling supervisor is 75, 76 this year. He's still working, still very, very sharp. So I'll just keep going. So the practice, trying to figure out a name at the moment, so kind of struggle with that one at the present. But
That was going to be the next question I ask you. Where can people find you? So if the
Oh, well, I'm not gonna...
let's go straight to your Facebook page.
Yeah, do that. Dr. Delroy Hall. There's one of me looking quite healthy, not as kind of bushy as this at the moment. Dr. Delroy Hall. I can leave an email address if people want to email me.
Please do. What's your email address?
Right, so it's delroyhall101@gmail.com.
Great stuff.
Yeah,
if anybody wants to find you, needs some help, want to talk and reach out further.
Well, then put it in your box, so then you've got it then.
Stuff. Thank you. So it's delroyhall101@gmail.com. Excellent. So Delroy,
messenger as well. So.
I have that. Great. So thank you so much. This has been very
invitation.
Very, very informative.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. Loved it. Thank you.
You are very welcome. Take care.
Okay. Blessings to you. Take care.
Thanks, Zoe. Take care now. Bye.
Bye-bye.